Hi, and welcome to Conversations and Plugs. Good to see you guys, and welcome to our Reflections episode.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Wangũ, and today we're doing it differently.
Yeah, today we're doing our second reflection
Yes.
after doing quite a couple of episodes that we want to reflect on. And we are so grateful, I think, for our community, for you guys, for subscribing, for liking. That has been amazing. Please continue to do that. And we were talking with Wangũ, and we're like, guys, please let us know what you want to see as well, so that it can help us bring more value to the community.
Yep.
And then we can actually reach out and just see how we can build this community together.
Yeah. We're learning so much about democratizing knowledge.
Correct.
And I think a lot of conversations that we've had, both here on the podcast and outside of the podcast, has taught me to actually start to see that opportunities are indeed everywhere. But we've picked up quite a number of themes in this episode.
And I think even for us as well, I think some of the things we'll be looking at today around entrepreneurship, resilience, disruption, systemic change, and even our own personally trying to grow a podcast, I think has its own challenges as well. I think the dedication. And then you hear so many statistics of, I don't know, episode 3 or 7, you guys are done. So us guys have been going strong. And we almost come into a year in June, actually.
Yes.
Well done, Wangũ. Good job.
Well done, Cliff.
Staying the course.
Staying the course. Definitely not the same person I was a year ago.
Yeah, and sometimes isn't it cringe when you look at our first episode? And then you fast forward to now, we're just like, man, what were we doing? We overthought everything.
Exactly.
The lights were too bright, the camera and the glare. So
we can only improve on what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And so the growth has only come from us doing the work.
Correct.
And even learning along the way.
Yeah.
Even how we're growing the podcast, learning that shorts.
Oh, yeah.
And constantly cutting and
repurposing.
Yeah. Repurposing your content.
Yeah.
Writing articles.
Correct. I think that's good. Yeah, that's true. That has been an amazing growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think playing around with CapCut.
Yes.
And then we meet other people who tell us, but have you tried this? So that has been quite a journey in growth on content creation as well and curation.
Just as we started, you just said, don't you love AI?
Don't you love AI?
We have journeyed with AI as well.
Oh yeah. I think we have absolutely learned quite a lot, and we're not promoting any brands, but however, AI has been a lifesaver, I think, and especially when it comes to cutting our episodes. Whether it's the transcripts, the content, so that has really enabled us to actually work so fast, and that has been so cool. Maybe also my highlight has been when you're saying we're not the same people. I agree with you. For me, the thing that has been actually amazing has been, so one of the things we tend to do is before we have anyone on the podcast is meet them for coffee, cheap dates. However, I think for me, it's what's been born out of that. It's not even about it's the networks, it's the friendships, and for me that has been a big standout.
It's the stories
and the stories as well. Yeah, people are when you meet them at a human level. So that has been amazing.
I wrote when I've been journaling. As we were reflecting, I've also been journaling about the journey.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see that our stories, or let's say conversations, are like blueprints of messy lives.
Yeah.
People doing it anyway.
Correct.
Building from the messy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we want to have that perfect first draft, and there's nothing like a perfect first draft.
Yeah.
Even episode 8 versus episode 15.
Correct. Yeah.
You can see change and growth.
It's been a lot, and and I think we also have our own fears sometimes where when we see our guests on other podcasts and you're like, man, and you realize there's nothing new under the sun, man.
There's nothing new.
you keep at it, and it depends with how you tell the stories. And another thing that has struck me around podcasting as well has been, I mean, when you hear it from, especially when we had Dan on, and he was talking about just do you, be authentic. And Doris as well, our producer at Summer Box, was like, just do you guys. I think it has a very different meaning now than when we started.
Yeah.
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 We really did not know what we were doing.
We didn't even know the depths of our capacities.
Correct.
And abilities.
Yeah, we've really been stretched.
Yeah.
So today I want us to look at 5 themes. I think we walked through these themes in terms of there are 5 of them that we noticed from our guests, what we call season 2. We call it season 2 just because we decided. So we will go through some of the guys who've been on our podcast, and then we will go through a couple of themes. 5
Should
of
we
them.
first say who we're reflecting on?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Who do we have?
Brendah Mwirichia.
Mwirichia, CEO of Pickendale.
Esmeralda De-Souza.
Esmeralda De-Souza, Spez Catering.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The founder and CEO of Spez Catering, correct. We had Maria Nkumba, Xperia, founded an Xperia agency. We had Dr. Zena, Santa River Clinic. That's another whole discussion.
Yeah.
We had Aceda, one of the founders of
Semabox.
Zane. Oh my God, Zainab.
Nasser.
Wow.
She brought back the play in our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you've interacted with Zane, you know the kind of person she is. Absolutely playful. And we love her. And we had Moses Kemibaro talking about digital transformation. AI. And finally, I think one of the persons we must bring back to this conversation is Mackinlay Mutsembi.
Yeah.
I think especially for him, because I think all of us saw he did a world record attempt, which was unbelievable.
24 hours.
24 hours playing the trumpet. I was there for that event, and it was quite something. I mean, talk about pushing boundaries.
And also just how community rallies around you when you build the right community.
Absolutely.
Because even at 7 a.m., there were people cheering him on as they had breakfast.
Absolutely.
11 a.m., 2 p.m.
Yeah, I thought that was absolutely amazing. I mean, Kenyans, guys, Kenyans really show up for guys, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Lynn Ngugi.
Whoa, Lynn Ngugi. Wow. I think talk about authenticity and talk about somebody challenging the norm, and I think
doing it boldly.
So absolutely. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Shall we jump into them?
Let's do it, Clifford.
Entrepreneurship and resilience. I think a couple of people stand out here when you look at Brendah. I think with Brendah I think we loved how she's such a butterfly. She just is, and you can actually assume her, but she's making major moves. And especially, I think what probably went under the radar for a lot of people is she actually acquired an agency. And I thought that was pretty cool. Talk about 7 months of resilience and persistence, and what she has done building a 14-year-old advertising.
Is it 16? Now
14.
it's,
oh yeah. It's a teenager,
Yeah.
yes, but I don't know whether it's 14 or 16. I can't remember. But yeah. So,
I also love how she's very clear that we are going to have homegrown companies that are going to lead the charge in communications in tech on the continent. I remember asking her, so you've acquired one company in Kenya. What is the plan? What are you thinking about Africa? And she said, you know what? Africa is ours, and we are going to come out on top. And frankly, she said, the West or the East are not going to tell us what we're to do. We will begin to roar loudly. Yeah.
I think over the course of talking about Africa, one of the things I did realize, and I think some of the knowledge we've gathered with you, is when we were telling guys, we have systemic issues. Actually, some of the things I've realized and been educating myself on is around then how do you expand a business across Africa? Because, I mean, come on, people have done it.
Yeah.
And I think looking at Brendah's journey, I remember I was telling you I came across some guys who were trying to simplify it for us. Number one was around commercialization, that you must commercialize your business. And what we will do is we will have a masterclass on, we should have a masterclass on commercialization and bring some guys on. Maybe that's what we should do for coming episodes. We just do some thematic stuff around how do you commercialize your organization. The second one is I realized that African countries have actually signed quite a lot of treaties and agreements, whether multilateral or bilateral. But a few stood out for me, which is COMESA, which are instruments we probably don't take advantage of. East African Community tariffs, in terms of how do you then explore that. And most importantly, I think the biggest one was the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which came for businesses. Once you fulfill its requirements, opens you up to a significant portion of the continent, which is 22 countries signed onto it, and immediately you're able to scale to those countries. It really does remove those barriers, and there are things in there. The African Union has put out digital transformation policy. And so I think for me, like we said, some of those things, I think we will share them and put them together for guys. We will be putting them together under Conversations and Plugs, the articles we're putting out. So look out for those and just go find us on LinkedIn and just go through that stuff that we're putting together, because we said we'll put resources for guys, and then eventually we also put them on our website as well. So that for me, for Africa, is I am hopeful now more than ever, than even when I started the podcast as well. So I'm pretty excited to see what comes out of that.
And how do you build your business with that in mind?
Absolutely.
And what infrastructure needs to be in place for you to be there, to be that company in 3, 4, 5 years?
Absolutely.
Also hearing from people like Brendah again, what makes, as somebody who wants to acquire more companies, what makes a company attractive to
Absolutely.
her? And what should companies be doing right now to build for the future?
To build for the future, for mergers and acquisitions.
Franchising as well.
Yeah. I think I used to hear this concept of begin with the end in mind. And sometimes my issue with concepts is they're not tangible. And for me, I'm usually like, okay, make it make sense. Like, can I touch it? And I think we have lots to share when it comes to that. And we will write articles and we will share lots of details with guys as well in the community. So look out for that as well. Maria Nkumba and Xperia. I think she was very, again, something I noticed, by the way, we had lots of women on this podcast.
Women are making moves on this continent.
Major moves, unassuming, afraid, vulnerable. And I think that's, especially me being a guy, it's actually pretty admirable to see. That's a big thing.
Actually, I remember Esmeralda saying that she's clear that there are some rooms that have been opened to her because she's an African woman, but she understands the moment the door is opened, she will stay in the room because of her skill. And so I like that. I like that you understand that the time is right for you as a woman, but that shouldn't only be your saving grace. It's what are you bringing into the room?
It's like, just open the door and catch me.
Yes.
Watch me.
Watch me open the door for others who are coming behind me.
I think it's maybe as men we need to have a conversation around how business is changing and how women are doing it, because I've been pretty, to be honest, I'm worried for my gender. I think maybe how we are raised, we think we are everything. And that's something we probably need to explore. We are a bit broken, and I don't think the things that have got us here will continue to sustain us in terms of building great companies. So I think that was, for me, a major standout.
About the male gender. Those are thread on X that I was looking at, where women were talking about how when they were moving out of their homes, they were blessed with a sofa or a cooker, and men were just told, "Oh, Unanda, be strong, continue being strong." And I think sometimes the strong narrative is what disempowers men, because strong comes from numbers, strong comes from community, strong comes from understanding you need to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yeah.
I love when Lynn said that. Lynn was amazing.
No, Lynn was unbelievable, and I think since we're on the gender personally as a man, I think probably going through this journey as well. I think I remember telling even one of our guests that I go to therapy, and they were like, "Are you okay?" uh, which is incredible, because a lot of people assume that you go to therapy when you're broken. Yes, that's true.
But we are all flawed.
But we must normalize that, because there's things that even as men we need to deal with. Forget that help is gender neutral. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, we all have issues to work through, and I think it's not. I think it's something that we should embrace.
Yeah, you know what I feel like therapy also is. You have a couple of laptops. You've gone through a couple of laptops in your time.
Yes.
And there's that laptop that you've probably used like 13 years ago.
Correct.
And when you turn it on and you're like, why are you getting so hot? Why is the fan so loud? I feel like sometimes therapy is just, okay, are you ready to upgrade? Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I really like that analogy.
Yeah.
Well said. And then, especially when going back to the first theme around entrepreneurship and resilience, there was Zane. And she brought out very interesting stories around our education system, and that one broke my heart even more. I mean, raising kids now, you're always trying to curate content that they can see themselves in.
Yeah, a window perspective and a mirror perspective.
And a mirror perspective, yeah.
Mirror is when they see themselves in the stories or the media they're consuming.
Yeah.
Window is for them to experience something else that they didn't know about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it's something we are very passionate about, and we've been talking about it. And I love what Zane is doing, which is curating African stories. So Playroom KE, you guys should check out that for your kids as well, in terms of how she's curating African stories on Spotify, on Apple podcasts. So yeah, just check that out.
Yeah.
I wonder if she's on YouTube yet. I'm not sure, but just check out Playroom KE. I think she's doing an unbelievable thing. And the Book Nook, absolutely, the Book Nook. She's doing an unbelievable thing in terms of inclusion. Forget even the word inclusion, in terms of allowing us to curate our stories and tell our stories the best way we can.
Yeah.
And I remember her giving that funny story for. Is it a bowl of? It was what?
A book that she.
Yeah, there was the book.
Yeah.
And even how you tell African stories, it's very nuanced.
Yeah.
Like when you, I think, talk about sleepers, you can't relate. I mean, not everyone can relate, and I think we've had a very different version and reality told through somebody else's that we can't relate, and
exactly. The danger of a single story.
Yeah.
And.
Or the danger of even not having your own story.
It's identity.
Yeah.
I think what she's doing is giving back our identity to our children, or
absolutely
something around
no, it's
identity.
important, and we must tell these things, because a lot of what stood out for me is a lot of how we were set up as a community. Our stories were told through oral tradition,
exactly,
passed on, and it's the same thing. Like, this is how we used to do it, and it was never written down. And we must then. And what I'm loving is she's using the same oral way of doing it, and then turning them into stories on podcasts, on audio. And I think she's doing some really great stuff in there.
Yeah.
You want to move on to the next theme?
Yes.
Personal growth and leadership. Right? Here we had Zena. Right?
From Romania.
All the way from... she thought she was going to Rome. That was very funny as well. And in terms of how... and even how, I mean, she could easily fit into any of these themes, especially around entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But when we look at her and her partners, Dr. Omboy, Dr. Sally, that whole clique for Santa River Clinic, I think they're onto something in terms of what they're doing around healthcare.
Yeah.
Which is the most counterintuitive thing in terms of how our healthcare system is set up, which is for curative. And I learned something which is around preventive. And again, then begs the question is, who benefits when you're treating curative?
Say it.
And who, and I mean, do you want to prevent something or do you want to treat it?
Yeah.
Or do you want to cure it after? I think that it's rather obvious that we should design our systems to be more curative, to be more preventive than curative.
Yeah. And that just even reduces the load of our healthcare system.
Absolutely.
But also even how she challenged how our healthcare systems are designed, where the government is both the provider, the insurer, the regulator,
Yeah.
and therefore
You can't be judge, jury, and executioner. So, which means already from a from a design perspective, already you're designed to fail.
Exactly.
And you're designed to create dependency amongst many other incompetencies, because you can't do that.
Yeah.
And government should continue to be oversight and create the conditions for people to feel those things. And so already I think healthcare will be a point of discussion a lot, and it's very hot here in Kenya as well
right now, because we're now realizing I'm not sure even the new structure that is in place is going to survive for much longer, considering just the burden of patients right now.
The design is flawed, and sometimes you just question, like, in terms of you just wonder. Listen, we're not experts, we're just armchair critics, but active participants. But sometimes you just question, like, guys, when you were designing this, like, what were you thinking? Maybe there should have been more women in the room.
Brendah talks about when that's very funny. I agree. She talks about the 7 hats that even as they're working on strategies, there are different hats that they wear when they're
the 7 thinking hats.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a book by Debona or something. Yes.
Yeah. Where were the different hats in
the design? I am shocked, by the way. It just beats a lot of logic. Lynn Ngugi, my goodness. I remember when we were talking about her and reclaiming her voice. I mean, she was a ball of energy.
Yes.
When she came on, and there's a lot of things I can't get out of my head in terms of what she's doing. What comes to mind is just her courage to do what she believes in. Number 2, using her voice and platforms differently that we have. She's almost like our Joe Rogan of sorts.
She is.
Like she's pretty influential.
Yeah.
And building a business around content.
Yes.
She's building a network.
She's building a network. Yeah.
And it was, I thought it was interesting to hear her talk about her creative side, and how she allows, because of the team she's built around her, it allows her to be creative and do what she needs to do as her business is being taken care of.
Yeah.
And I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. Building systems that last, systems that are empowering rather than just draining you down. She talked about the value of rest, and I don't think we talk about a lot of that with our entrepreneurs. Yesterday we were having a conversation about performance anxiety. Productivity anxiety.
Correct. Oh my goodness, productivity. And I know we talked about it in terms of some of us were conditioned to make sure that we have output every single day, and that's a measure of your just keep going and not stopping to reflect, and I don't think that has been very healthy.
Yeah.
And it's something we need to work through, that rest is actually a superpower, and that is where creativity comes from, that you must rest, you must recharge. And some of these lifestyle diseases guys are highly connected to the kind of lives that we live, very stress, overproductive.
And we were finding that also pauses in people's lives actually were leapfrogs when they came out of them. Unfortunately, COVID was one big pause, but we did see that, like Nkumba's story, she was strengthened in COVID. Esmeralda came back stronger after COVID.
Correct.
Aceda was evolved over COVID.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then speaking of Dan was quite interesting in terms of his grasp of IP. I guess maybe because he's also a musician as well. and the music industry. I found that pretty impressive, and how sometimes even when you're pivoting or moving to something else, it's it's funny. Out of all our guests, another thing we keep saying is nothing ever goes to waste.
Nothing.
Like whether you worked, like it just seems like you bring your whole experiences forward, and that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people do stuff and they're like, where am I going to use this thing? Well, clearly nothing ever goes to waste.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Even Lynn talking about working in the Gulf, paid for. Paid for. She's learning from. She's earning from that school fees that she
talk
paid.
about personal growth. She was a waitress at
A
the
waitress,
Gulf.
yeah,
And
and a
doing her
barista.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And fighting the legacy media, not fighting, like just realizing the legacy media doesn't work. And her taking a leap of faith and doing what she's doing. And that was an unbelievable conversation.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and talking about Lynn Ngugi, our third theme was around media and digital transformation.
Everyone we spoke to had something to say about that,
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from personal branding, when it comes to Lynn Ngugi, we talked about the power of her brand, asking her, so why did you use your brand personally? Moses talked about how content is shaping the landscape, content and AI. And we can see Moses leaning into that. Like he's just gone into full publishing and he's making an incredible living right now, or rather attempting to make a living out of it. And I met him yesterday at an event, and it was very enlightening to hear how his whole world is changing, whether it's from training workshops and how he's moving forward.
Mackinlay.
Mackinlay. Wow, what a story.
But still, he's just been churning it out.
Yes.
He goes into his creative core for 2 months, comes back with something different.
Yeah. I mean, talk about pushing boundaries, because and a guy using content. I don't think I was telling somebody, and I remember being in that challenge and for Mackinlay, and I remember there were some hiccups at some point. And I remember guys were saying, okay, it is not about the outcome, it's about the journey. And I was telling somebody, and now if you look at Mackinlay, he's probably not the same guy again,
No.
practicing to play a trumpet for 24 hours. And then the person he's become after that, you are never the same.
Yeah.
Like something flips.
Yes.
I mean, you have pushed past your boundaries, and I think I was at some point front row seat just watching what was happening. An amazing story. So just go over to Mackinlay Music and just see what an amazing human feat that was, even as they wait for the ratification of the world record, whether it comes or not. For
He's
me,
done the 24 hours.
He did it.
Yes.
And it was unbelievable, by the way, guys.
We had a discussion during Mackinlay's. I met you there. I think it was when he just restarted, because we also need to talk about it wasn't always perfect, but he still went in anyway, because I think he'd done 2 hours and then they realized something was wrong and then they had to restart. But we talked about something around fame. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it ties down to this theme for media and digital transformation, because at the heart of it, even what we are doing is you realize the power platforms moving forward into the world we're moving in. The world is completely shifted. You're talking about how China decided that from an AI perspective, it's mandated now AI
From 6 years old.
From 6 years old, everyone is diving into AI, and what has the US done? Same thing as well. So you can already see that we are living in a very different world than we grew up in, especially for our kids. The leap for them is going to be immense, or is already immense.
Yeah.
So your content, technology, at the heart of that is what we need to embrace. And when I look at what that framework, there's a framework called fame, feeling, and fluence. When you look at the fame bit, is what Mackinlay was trying to do to grow his brand. I mean, I don't know the whole story, but part of it is he achieved that pillar, which is from a fame perspective. Again, how do you put your brand out there? Lots of people know Mackinlay Music now, and it has its benefits as well. And yeah, so that's
Those fluence
and feeling.
and feeling.
Yeah, feelings around emotion.
Music.
Yeah, music. and how you make people feel, I guess.
Influence, I also think that even how he's influenced different genres and brought them together from jazz,
Yeah.
or like he's brought Benga in.
Correct.
He's created a platform.
Correct.
But he's also put in different other genres.
Yeah.
I remember attending one of the jazz events, and it's beautiful to see how somebody can grasp a concept and then just keep birthing that concept in different forms for different audiences.
Yeah.
Because the audience for Gecko wouldn't be the audience for something else.
Correct.
Yeah.
We live in a very interesting time, the information age, the content age, the democratization of branding, right? Big brands are not as influential as they used to be as well. Everyone fighting for the same attention. But for me, one of the things that also stuck out for me, for our guest, was riding waves. Like, if this is the wave that's happening, it happened for Dan. Moses caught it a while back.
Yeah.
He was at the forefront of riding waves. So it looks like and Moses is obsessed with fast mover advantage.
Yes, he is.
And that's okay too. But everyone was just catching waves, and everyone seems to be building something out of it. From Moses to Lynn to Zena as well.
I think across all our guests, there's some fast mover.
You're just in it. You're one of the fast.
But can we just double click on fast mover advantage? Because I think what I'm hearing from our different guests is that there are different perspectives. So, for example, Lynn Ngugi brought out that when you're building a brand, first of all, no one can tell your story the way you need your story to be told.
Wow.
But your brand, build a brand out of your own overflow and not what other people want the brand to be.
Correct.
So don't build a brand hoping that Coke will kind of pick it up. It's what's Wangũ and how is Wangũ coming out into this world. Then you have Moses, who said that every entrepreneur needs to be a creator, that we have to keep creating.
Correct.
Then you have Zain, I think Zane's story started when she went into a library and found a book about Kenya, about Africa, and how it was just this black child with flies and slippers. And she's like, this narrative needs to shift.
Yeah, correct.
Who else I feel like Esmeralda as well.
Yeah,
when people were ordering Black Forest from her, but then she started to see that also institutions could also use kitchens.
Correct.
And just evolving from that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember all of them, but I feel like there were different perspectives in digital transformation. Everyone is using digital in some way. But I think even in branding, how they've branded themselves or how the brand came out from them, some of them, I feel like Moses, it's been 22 years. So he's peaked.
Yeah.
He's gone into his valleys, he's peaked again.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that all I'm hearing is just start.
Yeah. Then everything else will follow.
Yeah, but everybody has almost offered some blueprint on how to start, how to continue, how to keep going, how to plot.
Yeah.
Esmeralda realizing that all she needs to do is to earn her MBA from books and the streets.
Yes.
I found our guests offering so many different insights based off their contexts, but all of them are very clear that they're carrying something that's bigger than them, and they're doing it anyway. Yeah.
And for majority of them, I think what cannot be underestimated is the power of these digital tools is insane.
It's insane.
The power of content, the power of putting your story out there. But I think some of the things that set them apart are authenticity. Came out really strongly. I mean, talk about authenticity in Lynn Ngugi. It was crazy. We loved the humor of Esmeralda, and you can just see how she used digital for therapy and to business herself as well.
Build a community
too for her business. So you can already see common themes begin to to appear, authenticity at the heart of it, community, content. So I think it's been pretty cool.
Yeah. Mackinlay talked about even the power of a CEO and its influence on the brand. He talked about Steve Jobs. And even posthumously, we still talk about him. He talked about Tesla and Elon Musk. I can't remember what name he gave the CEOs, but also just how your personal identity also comes out of the work you do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are doing incredible stuff. I think that we were all in awe of.
Yeah. That's for sure.
I like this other theme here: systemic challenges and social change.
Hey, systems.
Yeah, systems. Sometimes I'm told that I use systemic a lot in my conversations. So systemic.
I feel like I use it as well. I use ecosystem.
Because it is systems.
It's systems.
I was like, our systems are so. Oh
Because
my
we've
god!
realized that we have to also.
That's the thing we must change.
Yeah. It's that enabling environment that carries all these businesses. I was doing research for an article that I'm trying to write for Conversations and Plugs, and it's just understanding that even how the systems were not built for you to thrive. We talked about earlier how, while there have already been some agreements on the continent in terms of how we can do business with each other, moving money from one country to the next. Let's say if I'm moving money from East Africa to West Africa, it's challenging.
Extremely.
We talked about remittances as well.
Correct.
And how difficult it is in some African countries.
Absolutely. To terminate the payment in a country, you have a PayPal account or Waze or whatever, but you try removing your money in Kenya or...
We had a conversation with some, you like to call them kids.
Yes.
Who are setting up something. And there was, one of them said he's a freelancer. He's been paid through PayPal. He's gotten, I think it was what, $3,000. And a local bank told him, you don't look like the person who should get $3,000. So they refused to release the money.
Yeah.
I mean even if you're the best at what you do, the bank has refused your money.
Anyway, banks do what they need to do, and they're very heavily regulated, but I think they're the least innovative in my estimation. But enough about banks.
System.
But it's a
system that keeps just feeling like it's working against you.
Correct.
But I think for me, when you talk about systems, you can zoom in, zoom out, macro, micro, meso. But like Esmeralda, when she talked about her business, she realized that she didn't understand the entire system of her organization. She was very okay with the revenues, but she hadn't looked at the bottom line. She said revenues was an ego thing. She was happy with that, the money coming in.
Yes.
But because she wasn't understanding the financial part of her business, she's
correct.
Ended up having to walk her way through some difficult challenges right now.
Correct.
And so systems are both internal, external, geographic, but those are the things that we have to navigate in entrepreneurship.
Correct.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, before I even forget, when you talked about payments, I did a research around payments recently.
Yeah.
And for anyone watching, please just go check out. They're called Bridge, a report called SIPS, SIIPS. Looks at payments in Africa and the different systems that are in play. And I think there's been quite a lot of developments in there. And if you want to understand payment ecosystems and payment systems across Africa, that is pretty instructive in terms of the research that they do. I found it invaluable. It gives you a proper picture. And you can see there's actually the African Union. There is the Pan-African payment systems that has come live. I saw a Kenyan bank use it the other day and really advertise it, that now you can actually settle money across the continent much easier. Similar to it is PesaLink, right? I think the evolution has been around. We used to use RTGS for settlement, real-time gross settlement, but now PesaLink came into play. RTGS had its limitations where it's a physical settlement. That's why you can't, if you're RTGS in something, if it reaches to 2-3 p.m., they stop accepting.
You wait till,
but PesaLink, you're able to send. So those are the
hours.
Those are the. What I'm loving is just how
that innovation
we are
is coming.
improving trade across
Yeah.
the continent, but more needs to be done.
Yeah.
Whether it's around travel, whether it's around easing restrictions to do business, harmonizing our legal, allowing Africans to trade across, I think will open up markets, because also one of the things I'm realizing is Kenya in itself is a very small market, and we've got to think bigger outside our borders, but we've also got to make it easier. I mean, we've got to let these guys, we've got to advocate for Africa to be more open than it is, and that's the fight, and those are the discussions that we need to continue to have.
Yeah, systems. It doesn't matter how well you're doing. If there's no system, it won't work.
Perhaps when it comes to systems and social change, 3 people stood out for me: Dr. Zena, Lynn, Ngugi, and Zane.
Even Dan, you didn't.
And Dan too.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yes. Before I forgot, yes, Dan too. And if you look at Lynn, and you go to Lynn Ngugi Network, guys, and check out the stories she's telling around colonial legacies, challenging what the stories that have been told and the narratives that have been there in the media industry. And what I loved is how she's reclaiming those stories and telling them differently. And I remember we were seated here with her, and actually during our coffee date, and that's the time the rally was on. And she was talking about, guys, do you know what the rally really was? Like, the things we should question, all the way from all the things she's questioning around conservancies, what the rally meant as a tool for colonial oppression. And we love the rally, but we really don't have context or history.
No, we just think it just blocks traffic. I mean, it just creates traffic every year.
Yeah. But it has a colonial identity behind it. In as much as it's entertaining, there's another whole story, and I love how she's helping us reclaim those voices.
I like also how she doesn't think about it as, what did she say? They're not conversations. No, they're conversations now. That she's coming to a point where she's realizing the more we talk about things, what matters to us, the more it kind of unlocks more within our minds, our hearts, and in our systems. I think systems
everywhere. And I like that you brought up Dan, because some of the things that Dan brought out were around IP and ownership, where we don't really have very strong IP protection, and no one is paying attention to that. Whereas you just go over to the West and you find China and the US are fighting about the number of licenses, patents, and that have been issued, which is a sign of progress. So even in terms of how we are measuring, how we are moving forward, and that is why the question then comes, especially when you look at the state of our economy. The question usually is, what have you invented that you have so much money? Because that's usually the measure we assume,
of course, of innovation,
of wealth, wealth creation is what have I invented? And you find guys, I'm like, okay, yeah, tell us, what have you invented? Why your patents? Why your and again, how we're measuring wealth as well is a bit convoluted, and it's probably not the way people accumulate wealth. Of course, there are outliers and things like that. But however, we really have a problem in terms of how we've set up our system to allow people to benefit from ownership, from IP, to even protect intellectual property.
Right.
And you're always seeing these battles, and we must learn as Africans how to do that. It shocked me as well.
To own our own stuff our way.
Shocked me as well. Somebody has gone and copyrighted Kikoi globally.
Yes.
I mean,
and let's
us be clear about this. I saw Masai in Norway or somewhere in some Scandinavian country. Somebody has a shop called Masai, and it's probably patented. So guys, please be smart. Go and IP your stuff. Go to Kenya Industrial Kipi. Go to Kekobo. Copyright your transcripts. Please, under Kipi, please check World Intellectual Property, whether your stuff is patented and trademarked. Your intellectual property is worth a lot more. So please, it might be tedious. I think for Conversations and Plugs, we took a couple of months, maybe 3 months. I just followed up on email, and we were able to trademark. Guys, you can do it yourself as well, right? But protect your intellectual property. Anything that you create is worth something, and you can actually license it out, right?
And that's how we've been fragmented because of what they came and and took and said now they own.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
please watch out, because what happens is this same things that you've patented, you're doing here, some guy has gone, sat waiting for you to build that brand.
Yeah.
He owns the IP at World Intellectual Property, WIPO, Intellectual Property Organization. So please just make sure you register your stuff. You will thank us later, and you'll thank your generation. Your generations to come will also thank you. So that was pretty instructive. Last but not least,
I think this is the big one for us.
power of community and collaboration.
Yeah.
From Maria to Esme to Zane, I think almost
Everybody.
everyone.
Everyone has leveraged community. Yeah. And the understanding that you cannot do this alone.
Yeah.
You can own something, but the community is who buys from you
Yeah.
and who keeps you going, keeps you on your toes, innovating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Conversation and Plugs community slowly growing, giving us referrals, and the things that we are trying to build. So, guys, we're open for collaboration. Hit us up and let's see how we can move this forward. Collaboration for me is so big because
Why, Cliff?
Because, I mean, the people we have met has been because people are just like, let's collaborate, let's do this. Oh, I can introduce you to X. For me, that's collaboration. That's partnership. Guys are like, okay, let's do this. Can you do this for me? And you cannot underestimate how that moves you forward when people are willing to work with you, to show you the way, to encourage you. And I think always us guys are thankful to Cyberbox, who are usually like our biggest cheerleaders in terms of this is what you do. And I think for me, that's community, that's collaboration. And you must be intentional around building it.
Yeah.
And when I look at how we've built this podcast, has been around, we want to get to know people at a deeper level, right? Get to know them intimately. And I think the friendships that we've made, the potential collaborators, has been based off of this. So, and it rolls on. Yeah. So if you look at who's this? Zane. I loved how she's tapping into community to grow her platforms, whether it's around storytelling, the play pods that she's putting together, and how she has rallied around that to get kids to play. She talked about how community spaces are also shrinking, and how she's trying to bring that back and bring real play. I think what hit me hard was how when we were kids, we are sent straight to the conveyor belt to be able to churn out government workers, to work in government institutions. And we have to rethink our, and I like the conversation around CBC, CBE, whatever they're saying. But also now, in as much as they've put together a system, it's important we query what it is that we are teaching our kids.
And why is it that we're teaching them that?
And why are we teaching it? Because some of that curriculum still feels like it doesn't go deep.
It doesn't also...
and the kind of citizen that it is turning out is, there's more that can be done.
Yeah,
to have an empowered
workforce.
Not just workforce, an empowered nation.
Actually, we need to move from workforce to nation.
To nation,
Yeah.
Yeah, because we lose out quite a lot in terms of being slightly undereducated. Again, we set out to have this podcast because we were missing something. That you know something, I know stuff. And then we probably needed a bigger platform to share it with. And we thought, okay, let's just start by profiling all these entrepreneurs, see what we can do. And I think we've learned a lot. And hopefully we're sharing with all of you guys, and we'll continue to curate that stuff even as we try and figure this out, because we still haven't figured it out. Lynn was here telling us, are you guys monetized? And we're like, huh?
What? Tell us more.
I'm like, we are still in the pits trying to get this going, trying to understand how to do this. So and we definitely will keep relying on this community to keep going.
Yeah, I think for me, one thing that really encourages me, and I remember speaking about it in the last reflections, was I remember you and I, a lot of our conversations used to be, oh, Africa, Africa this, Africa that, and just kind of feeling lonely in that vision for Africa. How many, like, are there more people like me out there who believe in a one Africa? And it's so interesting when we've spoken to all these entrepreneurs and they all have an Africa vision. I remember Brendah talking about, for her, she's clear that one Africa is the way to go. Because she believes that that's where we're going to get, that's how we get our power back on our continent, for our continent. I feel stronger. I feel stronger in my vision and my, I want to say, it's gotten me to go further in or making my decisions easier. Let me think about it. What I feel like it has done for me has shown me that I was not dreaming small, that I was dreaming of a bigger Africa. It is possible. We are seeing it happening. We are seeing businesses moving from good to great. And we are now realizing that several people across the continent are actually also vibrating in the same frequency.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you look at some of the connections we've made, has been around people who have the same vision. So we're not alone. And I think that's also a big realization. Even as we wind up, I want us to look at three things.
Okay.
I think for me is maybe asking you is what has shifted in you ever since we started. Yeah, that would be interesting. What your vision for the future looks like, and also sharing our lessons and challenges that we've had. What has shifted in you? What has had the most profound impact on you?
You heard me say it the other day. Transformation.
Okay.
I am very clear that we're transforming Africa one conversation at a time, one business at a time. And I'm understanding that to whom much is given, much is required.
Correct.
And now I am understanding that my capacity and my ability is that big. And therefore, I have to, like, it has to be well done, good and faithful servant. Like, I have to do. I have to do. I can't be on the sidelines. I'm deeply in the arena. And I'm learning that I am a form of gladiator growing in the arena. And I'm really proud of myself for putting myself out there, understanding that I am a vehicle, an asset, and I bring value. I add value. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the first one. Do you want to answer your own question first? And then I will move to the next two.
Your first one you've answered is around what?
What I've learned.
What you've learned?
Yes.
Okay. Oh gosh, how much time do we have? I have learned a lot around community, around collaboration. For me, those have been absolute standouts. The one thing that still rings to date is authenticity. That just put yourself out there, just bring yourself as you are. Don't try to be anyone that you're not. And the world will respond as it should. Also learning that I think we were very afraid around how people would react to us. That for me was, I mean, it was a genuine fear. Well, now it doesn't matter anymore. And that teaches you that sometimes just, despite being afraid, just do it anyway. And then just see what happens. I mean, what's the worst that you do? Fail? Okay, great. And then on to the
Failure
next.
is a privilege.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you move on to the next. The next one was what? Vision for the future, authenticity in business. Okay, we've done authenticity. Vision for the future?
It's vast. I do see that I believe that there will be more $1 million businesses in Africa.
Okay.
And hopefully dollar is not going to be our currency.
1 million or 1 billion?
1 billion, sorry. 1 billion plus.
Yeah.
But I also would like us to have our own currency and value ourselves on our terms. I do believe that there will be a different kind of interconnection on this continent because of digital transformation. That's what I can sense and I want for my future, for the African future that I envision. Yeah.
I like that very much. I envision, especially for the future, is Africa has been very good at making leaps or leapfrogging,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping that we can make giant leaps around our identities, around catching up with the rest of the world, because we have that ability, and that we can move a bit faster in making sure that we are developing ourselves. I am hoping that we will love ourselves more as Africans and collectively. Because sometimes I feel there's a bit of unnecessary hate towards each other. We really don't love ourselves as Africans, and that's something we must address and keep changing. I mean, our borders are really artificial in the grand scheme of things, and that thing called sovereignty is probably one of our biggest stumbling blocks, because we need to come together collectively as Africa to move forward. And I'm hoping those barriers will continue to come down, whether it's in travel, whether it's in collaboration. There's a lot more. We are innovative, we are original, and that's the vision. I'm hoping that will quickly be realized, that we will stop hating ourselves, because we really do. We really chop ourselves at the knees every time we're trying to move forward. So that's my hope. That's my vision of the future.
Yeah. Risks. Challenges. No, it wasn't risk. It was challenges.
Oh goodness, challenges.
Systemic challenge.
It's a system. No, it's just I've been saying systemic for too long. Challenges. Wow. When Africa or our podcast, because when it comes to our podcast, our challenges are the usual. It's just the time, the figuring it out, and we've just been taking it a day at a time, and I think we'll keep figuring it out. And see where this goes. But I'm proud of us, to be honest.
Consistency.
We have tried to be consistent. It's pretty challenging putting out episodes despite our busy schedules as well. So I'm pretty proud of how far we've come. And as we hit 1 year this June, I can't wait to see what happens and the things that we continue to build. So for me, it's more opportunities more than challenges.
Yeah. I agree with you on opportunities. There's so much to learn.
Yes.
To relearn.
Correct.
And I feel like for me, that's where I feel. I remember I told you I'm overwhelmed by potential.
You're overwhelmed by potential, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, let's keep going and let's see what we can build. Yeah, so I think you had something for the community.
I did.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe today you're in your messy middle. Maybe you're doubting your journey. Maybe you feel like you're building something that no one sees yet. If that's you, go back and listen to these conversations. Let Esmeralda remind you that small beginnings matter. Let Moses show you how reinvention isn't optional. It's survival. Let Lynn and Dan remind you that your voice is your most valuable asset. Do you have somebody else to add?
No.
Okay.
Let Lynn remind you that your voice matters.
Let Dr. Zena remind you to go for a checkup and choose yourself first.
Correct.
No one can advocate for your health better than you can.
Yeah, let Mackinlay teach you what resilience looks like. Yeah. Let Zane show you the power of community and our heritage.
Yeah. Let Maria remind you about faith and fearlessness.
Yeah.
Brendah remind you to just do it anyway and keep at it.
Yeah. And all of them collectively riding the waves, reinvention.
Yeah. You're not alone. You are just building.
You're building.
So thank you for being part of the Conversations and Plugs fam. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. we're just getting started. Thank
Peace
you.
out. Out.